Happy Monday again, everyone. I am so excited to chat with Camille today and excited for all of you to be here as well. So I hope you're doing okay. I know Mondays can be kind of tough, but hopefully these chats will invigorate you just as much as they do me because it helps make me excited for the end of the day. So soon we'll be chatting with Camille from Camille at the Wheel. If you haven't checked out her Instagram already, you gotta, because it is beautiful and she has a lot to chat about in regards to kind of balancing her professional career and doing art on the side. So, or I shouldn't say on the side, right? As like a part-time potter. So we are really excited to chat with Camille. Those of you that are joining us here, go ahead and give me like a hand raise if you love pottery, if you love ceramics, or if you're just kind of interested in learning more about ceramics and what that looks like today. I think it looks like a lot of my buddies here are art teachers. I'm seeing a couple other new faces. Also, be sure to stay tuned till the very end of our chat. Today, we will be doing a quick giveaway. Sarah's a fan of ceramics. I love it. Thanks. We'll be doing a quick giveaway of our, as always, ever popular holographic AOEU stickers. So I will be asking a trivia question about our chat today, and the first person to answer will get one of those awesome stickers. So we'll let Camille get into the room here, and I'm going to just give her a quick second. This is always my favorite part, making sure that my friends can join. If y'all have any random questions for me while you wait, you're welcome to ask. For those of you that do not know me, I am Sarah Krajewski, elementary art teacher in Wisconsin, and your host of the Instagram live chats on Mondays. Feel free to drop a message for the Art of Ed or over to me at Art Room Glitter Fairy if you have someone that you would like for me to reach out to as a guest, because I'm always looking for amazing guests like Camille. Yay! All right, she'll be joining us here. Good tech vibes. Got this from Coach T. Hi, Camille.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm gonna, hold on, let me see if I can make my headphones connect.
Okay, I will give you a tech difficult. I was like doing the tech vibes motion to like send you positive vibes.
Thank you. Okay, give me 1 second. I think
You're good.
I
You take your
One
sweet
second.
time, my friend. We
Okay.
got a bunch of excited people joining the chat here. Hello, everyone. So psyched to see you all here. And like I already mentioned, feel free to stay tuned for our quick trivia question at the end, where I'll be asking you one question about our chat for today. And the first person who answers it correctly will get one of these super dope stickers. Did you get your headphones, Camille?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, then the answer is yes.
Beautiful. Welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. Can you tell our viewers about you as an artist, as a person? Just give us a little background about you.
Sure. My name's Camille. I am based in Queens, New York. That's where I do my pottery, Camille at the Wheel. I am originally from St. Louis, Missouri, so I'm a Midwestern girl at heart. And I love making stuff out of clay on the wheel, and things that people can use and incorporate into their everyday lives.
I love it. It's perfect. Like I said, if you haven't already checked out a lot of Camille's work, it's this beautiful combination of functionality and beautiful aesthetics, and it's very warm and just makes you feel really good. So you'll want to check out her work after this, and stay tuned after our chat today. I will be, of course, saving this chat, and I'll be linking to her website and some other things after this as well, so you can look into it a little bit more. So let's just start kind of from the beginning, because as you dive into your website a little bit, you kind of talk about like the story of your logo and how like you as a part-time potter sort of your journey, your path a little bit. So can you tell us about your logo and sort of like what your working artist vision is?
Yeah, so my logo is, I love the story of it. It was originally created for me as a birthday gift. When I first started doing pottery, I was obsessed with watching YouTube videos. And so I would spend hours on YouTube until 2 o'clock in the morning watching all these master potters making stuff. And I saw them all marking their work with the maker's mark. And so I said to my boyfriend at the time that I really wanted a stamp, a pottery stamp. And so for my birthday that year, he designed one for me, which was my head. It was just like a picture of me smiling that he turned into a stamp. And when I wanted to launch my business, I worked with a friend of mine who's a graphic designer, and he updated that original version of my stamp and professionalized it and smoothed out the rough edges. And one of the things that was really important to me was that you could tell from the stamp that it was a Black woman. Like, it's got my fro in it, it's got my head wrap, which I often wear. It's me smiling, and I get a lot of joy from pottery. So showing how the joy that comes through from being able to do this form of art was really important, and that representation was really important. And so all of those things combined to get to the logo that I have right now, which was a labor of love between my boyfriend and then a good friend of mine who updated it a couple of years later. So that's how I got to the little icon that you see on my Instagram posts.
Nice, nice. It's beautiful, and I love the origin story too, how it kind of morphs a little bit. It takes on a voice of its own, but I can see all of that in that simple symbol. I can see everything that represents you as well. And sometimes it can be tricky to stamp something into clay and have it be successful because you like have this vision, and then it stamps and you're like, well, that's not really coming out how I want. But there
Right.
are a few images on your feed of that, and it is quite crispy, which is impressive.
Yeah, thank you. It's there are some times when it's not as super crisp and clean as I would like, but most of the time it comes across in the way that I'm hoping. It's simple enough that it displays well, but there's enough detail that it is unique to me. So that was the goal.
I love it. I love it. So let's just take that a little bit further. You were talking about how that your ceramic play and your kind of like ability to create all these things gives you joy as an artist, right? And you want to spread that joy with the people around you. And if we look at your specific style, your carving techniques, can you just give us some background about your inspiration as to why that comes through in your voice? The carving specifically, or like your glaze choices, because your artwork, you can tell it's made by you. You know what I mean?
hmm Yeah. So originally I started carving work because my pieces were really crappy. And so
I
they
love
were
that
really,
honesty. You're like, hide
yeah,
this.
they were really heavy. And I made a little pot in one of my very first pottery classes, and my teacher at the time, Lynn, she showed me how to facet a pot. And so I cut off parts of it to make this geometric shape. And I really liked doing that. And so as
Hmm.
my work got better and less crappy, I still kept that carving mindset. And I would look at things and not be super happy with them and decide if I added some texture, maybe that would make it more interesting. And I eventually landed on designs that I really liked. And so the origin of Hello Dottie, which is one of my favorite lines to make, and I think probably one
Hmm.
of my most popular, came out of that, of wanting to be able to figure out how to add texture to my work. And I also love holding things, and I love things that feel really great. And one of the biggest compliments I think you could ever give a potter is that this feels really nice to hold. And so not only do I
Absolutely.
want the shape to be nice and an appropriate weight and things like that, there's something about having the texture that feels really great too. And so I gravitate towards that, and I try to imbue that in all of my pieces. And as far as the color palette, I work with what I've got. The studio that I started my pottery journey at had a pretty good selection of glazes, and you could mix them ad infinitum. And so I never found myself getting bored, and I never ventured into, commercial glazes or things like that, because there was so much that I could do just with the glazes at hand. And I kind of settled into a pretty neutral, kind of natural color palette that works with a lot of different things, but is not reliant upon only one glaze that I can only get from this one place that's very, very specific. It kind of, there's a lot of different ways that it can blend in with other items that you might have at home.
Yeah, I think that kind of fits in line with that beautiful functionality, right? Is what's going to make sense within a space, what's going to feel like it could just kind of ease right into anybody's home, and that is very evident in your work for sure. And I feel like honestly one of the best, like I love that how you said one of the best compliments is wanting to pick it up and saying like this feels really good in my hand, because as an elementary art teacher, like kids are picking things up
Hmm.
constantly.
Hmm.
And like maybe it's not always for kids, but there's something about like a really cool textured bowl or a cup or like something that just looks super cool like kids are like, yes, I must touch this. So like
Yeah.
your work reminds me of that too. I feel like they would really just love following those lines. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk just a little bit more about your process of actually making your pieces, right? What is more your favorite part and what parts are you like, I could have somebody else do that part for me when it comes to making
Yeah.
things in clay?
So a lot of people, clay requires so much preparation and you have to
Hmm.
wedge and weigh and all this other stuff. I actually don't mind wedging. I find it really therapeutic. Also, if you're really upset or you have a lot of energy
Uh-huh.
that you need to get out, slam wedging is really wonderful, and probably kids would really like that because you just
Yep.
throw it as hard as you can. So I don't mind that part. Of course, I love throwing. I also really enjoy trimming. The part that I like the least is glazing, even though that's
Mm,
arguably the most important part because if you ruin a piece with glazing, it undoes all of the hard work that you've done to get to that final product. So
yes.
glazing is my least favorite, but I'm trying to teach myself to like it or at least to tolerate it enough to be patient enough to do it right the first time so that I don't mess up a piece.
Oh,
So yeah, those are my thoughts. Cleaning's not fun, but clay comes out pretty easily once it's wet.
it's
So
true.
yeah.
It's all part of the process for sure. And I think sometimes, again, just relating it back to the classroom too, like those teachers that are middle school and high school and elementary teachers, anytime we work with clay, it can be kind of fun for us to talk to our students about what parts we love and building. And a lot of what we do is hand building. Like I only have
Mm-hmm.
one wheel in my classroom, but it's nice to know like there's certain things that you really love and certain things you don't. And I think it's always nice to hear from a potter like what you really love and what you don't because it just reminds
Yeah.
us that it's like not everything is your perfect favorite thing to do and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for
um
sure.
I have a question here in the chat that says, have you ever tried firing glass with your pottery?
No, I've seen photos. I saw a photo recently. I think it was on Instagram, and I wish I could remember who it was that I could shout them out. I was scrolling, but of somebody that had fired a glass with their pottery. I've never
Mhm.
done it, but am certainly interested in what that process is like.
Yeah, I think that would look really cool on some of those lower bowls that you have
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
I know some other art teachers, and maybe if anybody's done it in the chat, go ahead and drop in how you do it or a quick
Yeah,
a
I would,
quick
if
little
you
comment for
know
us.
how to do it,
Yes.
let me know.
I've also seen it and I'm like wanting to try it, but I haven't had the energy to figure out how to do it. So
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it looks super cool. Okay, so now the title for our chat today was about being a part-time potter, right? Because you also have a full-time job. So can you talk to us just a little bit about what it's like to balance being a business owner and like your regular job? How do you manage your time? And then what does that look like in regards to like making sure you have time for your work, your artwork?
Yeah, it really requires a lot of discipline, and it's discipline both to make sure that I'm making time for pottery and for my full-time job, but also discipline to not do anything and to be okay with downtime because
Ugh.
it's really easy when there's so many things that I feel like I need to do and there are deadlines. If I'm not doing anything, if I'm truly reading a book or sitting and watching TV or taking a break, it feels like, well, I should be doing this other thing or I should be working on this
Mm-hmm.
order. And so, on the one hand, being effective with my time to get a lot of stuff done is important, but it's equally as important to say, I'm not doing anything today, or I'm gonna go
Yes.
see a friend, I'm gonna go for like a bike ride or whatever, and be okay with nothing, which is very
I mean
hard
that
for me.
that still to
And
interrupt you,
nothing
that
is not
still
something,
sounds like
something
that's
is still
doing something.
something. Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But the
A
point is
bike
to
ride
be
is
okay with
definitely
like
something.
not being quote unquote productive and doing things
Yes.
that there's no end goal, there's no money on the line. Like
Right.
this is purely just, existing as a human.
Yeah. Yeah. And balancing that, like, again, knowing that this is a business you're running and you do want to create things that kind of fire your soul and you feel good and you love creating as an artist and that's that
Hmm.
baseline of how you feel. But then when do you manage, is this fun for me? Is this work for me? Do I need a
Right.
break from it? Like so you don't get burnt out. It can be a really hard thing to balance for sure. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And that's hard. What I've had to figure out is what are things that I can do on my own and what are things that I need to ask, where do I need to ask for help? And so
Hmm.
there are some things like administrative things, like shipping, for instance. Most recently, I was able, thankfully, to hire someone to help ship out my last batch of work. Previously,
Good.
that would have taken me hours and hours and hours and hours to do.
Yes.
So to be in a position where I can say, I can have somebody else do this, I trust this person, I can teach them my process and then have them go off and do it. That frees up a weekend that I can spend at the studio or a weekend that I can spend doing something else. And so I think it's about being strategic about how you want to spend what little time you have.
Completely. Yeah, I love it. It's like basically just prioritizing what needs to get done or what you want to get done. And then maybe it goes back to that favorites list. Like if shipping
Hmm.
isn't fun for you, then do you have the ability to reach out to someone or to kind of prioritize that in a way? Now, I know it depends on people who are joining the chat as far as if you're a creative, if you're an art educator, a combination of both, or, we obviously welcome anyone to the chat. But sometimes it's hard if you're a business owner to feel like you have the time for something like that, right? You come home
Yeah.
and you're like, it is both my love and my passion to create these things, but now it kind of feels
Yeah.
like work,
It
right?
is work. Yeah. Once money
Yeah.
enters the equation, it's work, and you've made a contract with someone that
Yes.
you take very seriously. If somebody's paying me for something, then I want them to be happy and I want them to understand within reason. I'm only one person.
Right.
These things take time. This is a long craft, so there is a wait period, but there's also an understanding that there's a certain level of quality that needs to be present, and there are certain things that you do need to do once it becomes a business that you are not necessarily constrained by when it's still just a hobby. And that can be hard. I will not lie and say that there have not been nights when I've been very panicked and anxious about things that have been outstanding that I didn't get to. And that's where I think
Hmm.
having grace for yourself is really important.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think you hit it perfectly right there. Is trying to be graceful to yourself, and ideally, most likely, your customers are going to be understanding too because they want your work and they want it
Hmm.
because it's made by you, not because they want it right now. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
the trade-off too of choosing to support things that are handmade or things that are locally made or made in small batches or whatever the fill in the
Yes.
blank thing is that you understand that certain things take time and they're made by a person, and there's
Yeah.
a person at the other end of whatever email address that you're sending to or whatever Instagram handle you're following. There's a human at the end of that.
Yeah.
And I've been very, very fortunate to have wonderful people that I have worked with who have been patient and supportive and encouraging and, cheerleading all along the way, which I've been really, really appreciative of.
Good, good. And that kind of leads me to my next question, which is chatting a little bit more about your collaboration with West Elm and about kind of what's the benefit to working with them, specifically about the 15% pledge, and just a little bit more about that collaboration. So I would love to hear about that in regards to your recent work with West Elm.
Yeah, they reached out to me last year, and they have these partnerships with local makers. And in the before times, those would actually be physically in their stores. So,
Mm-hmm.
New York artists would have work in New York stores. They moved that to an online. They may have always had the online model. I'm not sure, but
Mm-hmm.
specifically in light of the pandemic, it's all online. And so they partner with various small makers and feature their work on their website. And so I was one of those people that they reached out to. We came to an agreement about which pieces I wanted to sell there. And so I'm featured as a local maker as part of their online inventory. Um, as far as the 15% pledge goes, West Elm is one of several companies who have pledged to make sure that at least 15% of their inventory is made by people of color, and specifically by Black and Brown people. And so they have been partnering with a variety of different types of makers in pursuit of fulfilling this 15% pledge. it's not only ceramicists, they have textile makers and, all sorts of different types of products. But this is work that they have been doing and that a number of other brands have also been doing. And then occasionally, in addition to making sure that they've got the inventory for the 15% pledge, they'll also donate a percentage of the profits, not at the expense of the artists that they're working with, but out of their own bottom line to various nonprofits and organizations.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. I'll be sure to share your post of your work in those storefronts of West Elm. That must have been like a really
That was really
beautiful
cool.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you still able to purchase your items from West Elm at this point?
Yes, they're still available. I am in the process of figuring out what a kind of refresh would look like because I've had the
Yeah,
items there for several months now, but there are still some things that are up, and there's a lead time for those to give me time to make them once the orders come through.
of
So yeah,
course.
those are still available on the West Elm site.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations. That's a very huge accomplishment. And it's awesome to see that both on your end, but also from those businesses that are really recognizing to have that representation in the things that they're creating too.
Hmm. Yeah.
And and to bring it back just a little bit to our previous conversation about, or the previous question about that handmade element too. This is a full sidetrack, but I feel like you would appreciate this, Camille, is to, if at all possible, as a human, try to avoid those quick little purchases where there's like a pot at a store that's $3, and you're like, oh, somebody made that from a place, or like, I've seen it with like macrame or just any type of like art creation. Not to say that it's not okay to have those kinds of pieces in your home, but there's something so very meaningful about having a piece of work that's made by a person that might be just a little bit more, but you're really going to love it and cherish
Hmm.
it. And it almost becomes like this sense of pride, right? Saying like, oh,
Yeah.
this is this artist that I know where it came from, or like this cup that I use is by Camille. How cool. Let me show you her work.
Hmm.
Instead of, if you're able to, yes. I'm only just putting that out into the universe because I
Yeah.
feel like you'd appreciate that too.
Yeah, I do. And the thing is, my work is it handmade work in small batches. They're not cheap. And
Mm-hmm.
I respect that like times are hard and money is not easy to come across. And so I really value every single purchase that anyone makes because I recognize that people are working hard and there are a lot of things on the table that people need to take care of. And I
Mm-hmm.
think having that respect for other people's resources and that they're willing to use those to purchase from me is a motivating factor for wanting to make sure that the quality is good, wanting to make sure that when you do pick up a piece you are happy that you hold it. I also use
Yes.
everything that I make every single day.
Yeah.
And I also purchase from other makers. So I buy from other ceramicists and I have a favorite mug that somebody else has made and things like that. So it's not only that I appreciate when people do that for me, but I also try to find room in my own life to be able to do that for other people. And it really is special. And those are things that I use every single day. So, to the extent that you were able to, I
Yes.
absolutely support, you know, handmade, local, something where the person, because it makes a difference and it
It does.
contributes to kind of just a certain kind of economy where you
Right.
are knowing who your product is coming from and you understand what they went through to get it to you. That just makes it that much more special.
Exactly, exactly. And it's even, I think, even more meaningful if you're a maker of any kind, because you know how much work goes into creating something and how much love and care goes into those decision pieces.
Hmm.
And feeling that pride over someone wanting to own your work,
Hmm.
it can be really powerful. And as we were saying, obviously it can't happen with every single thing that's in your space, but if at all possible, trying to just create a story for yourself where it's filled with artists that you know or love, or
Yeah.
at least can see that they're a human, right? It's a
Yeah.
human made
Yeah.
piece.
Hmm.
That's why it's called handmade. It's because
Yeah.
it's made by hand.
Indeed.
Speaking of
And it
which,
also is good for the imperfections too.
we had a couple of questions in the chat here, Camille. One was, for your work with West Elm, did you create any special pieces with
Hmm.
them that was different than your other work, or was it more in line with what you were currently creating?
It was in line with what I'm currently creating, but there were slight alterations that I made for them. So it was in line with my general aesthetic. There is a line, a mini planter that's from the Hello Dottie line. And because that's a line that I make for myself often, I wanted to carry that through as like this is definitely me, like, this is my stuff. But I added a new colorway to that, which is only available at West Elm. So that was a kind
Nice.
of a tweak on an existing design. And then the other items are ones that I have made in some capacity before, but sort of updated
Mm-hmm.
and standardized a bit for West Elm. I am, like I mentioned earlier, thinking through product refreshes and new things that I might want to do. And so some of those things would be exclusive to them. And then I keep other things for my own shop updates when I have those every few months.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think that's really fun to have something to look forward to as that, like, maybe bigger audience for West Elm, but also
Hmm.
kind of keeping your local audience or your mailing list, those kind of people excited about what else you're working on for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then last question that I'm seeing, at least in the chat here, is about just like general working with clay.
Uh-huh.
Just because it can be really hard to both demonstrate for students and to just work with clay with a big group of kiddos, right?
Hmm.
So, well, this will be kind of like a twofold question. The first one is, do you have any just general tips about throwing on the wheel,
Yeah.
centering, like what helps you a little bit that you can send to the
Hmm.
masses for people that are
Uh-huh.
working with clay? And then secondly, can you just tell us about your experience as a student in an art classroom? So this
Yeah.
will just sort of like tie together a little bit, because as art teachers want to know what it was like for you and if there's anything you would change or that you
Hmm.
loved.
Yeah. I have this, I see this question from Mrs. T Art.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, with the laughing and crying
Uh-huh.
emoji, which is that is how it feels to center
Yeah, you're
sometimes.
like, I can't.
Um, so I have never taught pottery, but I have been a pottery student. Um, and in terms of throwing on the wheel and centering, for me, the thing that clicked about it was that it's not so much about physical strength, like in my arms or my wrists, as much as it is about utilizing body weight and the
Mm,
wheel to work in your favor. A lot of times with centering, you're so focused on how do I get this piece of clay where I need it to be, and there's like an element of brute force that you try to
mm-hmm.
apply. But the best advice that I've gotten is to actually relax and to let the
Ooh,
wheel do the work for you.
I
So
like
there's
that.
certain components, like, and I'm doing this as I'm holding my phone, where you want to be compact and use your body in your favor. So I always make sure that my elbows are braced against like my hip crease, and that I'm
Mm-hmm.
bracing my forearms against the splash pan, and that I'm as compact as I can be with my body, and my muscles are kind of, engaged in that way. But then the rest of it is centrifugal force and like letting the wheel do the work. You're pushing forward and down at the same time. And as much as tight as I kind of look and feel right now, there's also an element of relaxing. And once you stop fighting the clay, it moves a lot more smoothly.
Ooh.
So that that's a
I've
feels like a
honestly,
weird thing to
I've never
describe.
heard
I
it
don't know if that's
explained like
helpful,
that.
but
I feel like that's a really beautiful description. It's like this tug of war kind of, but just to like ease into the tug of war feels like
hmm.
way less scary, right? Because like
Yeah.
I always feel like I'm just muscling it, right? And I'm like,
Hmm.
everybody watch out, it's time to center, right?
Hmm.
But I think you're right. Just relax into it a little bit and focus on letting that wheel do the work. I love it. Perfect.
Yeah.
Channeling my inner bear. Um, okay. And then second part of the question, what was it like during your experience in with art? Younger, recently? Is there anything you wish was a little different or anything that you really loved that you'd like to pass on to our fellow art educators?
So I will speak to my adult education experience because that's most recent. The things that have been most impactful for me in clay have been teachers who just really freaking love what they're doing, like, and
Mm-hmm.
that enjoyment really comes through. And all the teachers that I have had, was taught pottery at Lamano Pottery in New York, at a studio in Chelsea, and I had a number of different teachers while I was there, and every single one brought a different level of energy and enjoyment to what they were doing. And so that's contagious, and being able to pick up on that has been really great. Patience has been really great too. Especially, I'm sure this is true of other art forms, but with pottery, I can remember one class in particular where everybody at one point was just like screaming for the teacher's attention, like, please help me with this. There's an air bubble. This thing's not working. I can't get this centered. What do I do? What do I do? Please help. And it felt a little bit chaotic, but having that patience is just, it's so important, because it can be discouraging. Like if you're not centering, it can make it or break it. Like if you don't figure out how to center, you can say, why am I doing this? I'm walking away.
Right.
But the right teacher with the right amount of patience can really make a big deal, in somebody's enjoyment and perseverance with a particular craft. I also think that things that have been really helpful for me have been breaking things down, and this is also speaks to my professional job as a project manager. Breaking things down into the smallest manageable piece is really important. And so if you're
Mm-hmm.
attacking centering as like, here's a ball of clay, here's a wheel, good luck, that's intimidating. But if you
Yes.
break it down as, here's a ball of clay, place it as close to the center of the wheel as you can, seal that ball of clay to the wheel so it doesn't fly around. Wet your hands lightly. Start with a small portion of the clay, center that little piece, and then move your way down and center that piece, and then move your way down and center that piece. If you can break things down into manageable chunks, then it feels manageable. And then all those things click, and then it's magic. So those are some of the things that have been helpful for me, as a student picking up on a new art form.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, hearing you break down those pieces into manageable chunks, I'm like, oh, you sound like you are already a teacher. Like that vocabulary, that ease of identifying what the steps are, I think is perfect. So you could easily easily teach. We'll just replay this for the class, and then
Okay.
they can learn they can learn how to do it there too. Okay, so that sounds like a great advice. I love the enthusiasm and the energy because as us art teachers know, if we're not excited about something, most likely our students are not going to be excited
Mhm.
about something. So that can be contagious for anyone about anything, right? Just about
Yeah.
talking about any item, being passionate about your life and what you care about and the things you're excited to share about. But then also that patience too can be very difficult
Hmm.
when you see someone struggling or when you want to help them. But I think that can be that's great advice too. Quick question here was, what's the largest amount of clay that you have centered, Camille?
Um, I feel like it was probably 15 pounds.
Woo! So that's like, well, I don't know how
It's
big of
not a block of
bags you
clay. Blocks of clay come,
like 25.
as 25 pounds. So I
That's
think the
massive
largest
though.
that I've done is 15.
What did you create from that 15-pounder?
Um, I was going through a moon jar phase,
Ooh.
and I had taken a moon jar course with an instructor named Dave Kim. He's on Instagram as Dave Kim the Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy can center like a whole block of clay, and it's incredible.
It's shot. Yeah. So hard.
So I think like in the course of that class, the highest I got up to was 15, and it was like a one and done kind of a thing. I
So
can
good.
center between like 10 and 12 pounds of clay pretty like I can handle that.
Uh-huh.
But 15 was a stretch and the stretch that I have not
Just,
made in a
just,
long time.
you'll be like, just let the clay work for you. It's just like fun.
It's a little different. That involves like using some muscle and like maybe some swear words that I probably shouldn't say on an
Right, right.
education podcast,
I
IG
get it.
live.
I get it. That one might be a little trickier to do for
Yeah,
sure. I love it. Well, at least I mean, it's good to try stuff that can be a
it's
little bit
good to
tricky too.
try. Yes.
Good try. I love it. Okay, so a couple more questions for you. The next one here is just about art teachers are always looking to infuse living artists into our curriculum, talking about people that are creating now, even people, I always think it's encouraging to show our young students you don't have to be a full-time artist. If you love making
Hmm.
art, you can make art and do other things, right? There's so many options for you, and art doesn't need to disappear from your life once you leave school. So, can you tell us just a little bit about where you've gotten your inspiration and how you might your work might inspire some other young artists?
Yeah, I have gotten a lot of inspiration, of course, from Instagram because it's been a great digital community, especially in a time when we have not been able to leave our homes really and
Right.
go interact with other people in person. Being in the pottery studio is always a great source of inspiration because there are so many different types of work and different styles and things like that. I also, this is a little bit counter to your question in that you're asking about being inspired by, living artists and things like that. But with pottery, so much of it is ancient. Like people have been using pottery in various forms for such a
Mm-hmm.
long time. And so I love going back into history and seeing what things other people were using pottery for and have that inform different shapes and things like that. So like, in New York and there are a lot of great museums. So I love going to the pottery section of any museum and seeing like what were people up to 1,000 years ago
Yeah.
with these water jugs and how is that still present now? Um, I also love the artwork that I grew up with, like in my family. So there are different paintings that I just grew up with as a kid that always inspire me. There are certain things that are really common. I can say as a black woman and as a black person, where I see certain things in people's homes repeatedly, and it's like, oh, this, like the baptism, we have that in our home too, and that just there's a sense of community and camaraderie there that's really comforting,
Mm-hmm.
and that can provide inspiration in the sense of, you know, how do I want my work to fit into a longer legacy of things that people might pass down through generations and things that, if I have kids, they might see in my house and then want that in their home someday.
Yeah.
So that's not really a concrete example of a particular artist that inspires me as much as a concept of kind of the generational power of
Mm-hmm.
art and of objects and how that can shape how we move through the world and what sorts of things we gravitate towards.
I mean, that's beautiful. I at times prefer that type of inspiration more so than this one artist or these five artists inspire me, because then sometimes that puts us in more of a box to have to feel like it has to make sense with those people. But if you're keeping it so broad and just saying like, what am I pulling from my own memories, or what's nostalgic for me, or what feels comforting for me that I would want to give to someone else, that is a great source of inspiration. And
Hmm.
everyone has that in some way, right? From whatever culture, whatever background, whatever upbringing you have things that make you feel like you were young. And I
Hmm.
think that is an excellent inspiration for what we create. Okay, I have one more question for you, maybe two. But I just wanted to check here because Mrs. T's got bringing in all of the questions for us here. She said,
Yes.
um, do you bring in culture into your pottery, and would you suggest bringing in culture into art for a majority white school district?
Yeah.
That's a
So
tricky one.
that is a tricky one. I think so. I'm going to interpret this to mean, do I bring my culture into my pottery? I think that everybody brings whatever culture they have, obviously, into whatever they're doing. I don't make a conscious decision to say, I want to bring in X culture, X background thing into my work, as much as I am bringing myself into my work, and that in and of itself is revolutionary in
Hmm.
light of everything else that's going on in the world. I think anytime that, we can find joy and power and resilience and love and all of those things, that is important. And so for me, just showing up as a Black woman in this space, doing this thing is imbuing my culture and my essence into my artwork. Um, and then of course, like I draw from so many other things, like Korean moon jars. The class that I was referring before is a classic Korean pottery technique. In terms of bringing various cultures into school districts and into a majority white school district, I went to a majority white high school. I know it can feel very isolating being the only
Hmm.
person in that environment. I have not encountered a time in my life where knowing about something other than the predominant culture was a bad thing. And so I
Right.
think
Yeah.
it is absolutely important and necessary to bring those other perspectives into an educational setting. I think it requires intentionality on the part of the teachers. And I speak not as a teacher, and I know that you all have to do a lot of stuff, and I have so much respect for educators. Um, but I think, doing the homework and bringing that into the classroom is really important. I think it's important to do that in a sensitive way and to make sure that like you're checking your assumptions and making sure that you are bringing that into the classroom in a way that does not cause harm and that is in fact beneficial to the students. Um, but it's worthwhile. And I have a distinct memory of a time in high school where there was one chapter in a particular or one paragraph in a particular chapter of history that we were reading, and it was the one paragraph about the contributions of Black people, and we skipped it.
Oh,
And I asked my teacher afterwards, like, why did you skip, like, why did you skip this one paragraph? And he said that we would go back to it and, whatever. And we never did, but that stuck with me as like,
yeah.
there was one time and you skipped over it.
Uh-huh.
So being super proactive about incorporating those things is really, really important. And that has a lasting impact on how a student experiences a particular class.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of teachers everywhere, that's heartbreaking, and I'm sorry for that experience, because sometimes you never know what action, what decision, what thing is going to be something that that student remembers forever. So you need to be really intentional as a teacher about your actions and being patient and being sensitive and being understanding and knowing your demographic of your students as well. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for sharing that story with us too, Camille. And I will also just say as well that as you were kind of discussing your your suggestions for us as well. I think there are a few other Instagram live chats that I've had with some other art educators, for example, like Miss Paula Lees, Mrs. Levy, those educators that have created the anti-racist art teachers group, and they have really, really great resources about how to avoid cultural appropriation so that you can be sensitive to talk
Mm-hmm.
about cultures with your students, but then introduce, discuss, and then take that and not appropriate, but instead encourage your students to create their own mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
To see what their own culture can bring and sort of dive a little deeper into that. So if you're interested as an art educator on looking a little further into that too, you're welcome to go back through our Instagram live chats. And we have a few other beautiful chats that are great about talking about this. So maybe I'll share a few of those in the story too, just since we kind of,
Yeah, definitely. And I think
yeah.
too, if I guess the main thing is that if you don't know, it's okay. It's okay
Yeah,
to ask. It's just a matter of like doing the work to find out what you don't know.
absolutely.
I don't think there's an expectation for anybody to know everything. And it's better to say like, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out and to bring that into the classroom, I think is really important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that reminder too, because that's always good to hear for sure. So this is my last question, which ironically you've given us so much great advice and so many good tips and hints and tricks and things about how we can live and how we can teach. But I'm also just curious if there's any parting words that you have for us, words of encouragement, words of something that you wish that you had heard as an artist or as a human as we move forward through this year.
That's such a good question. I always feel humbled when anyone asks me for advice because I'm like, I don't know anything. What do you
You're still a human, a
want
fellow
me to
human,
say?
Camille.
Um, I think from an art perspective, one thing that I am learning is that it is possible to make a living being an artist and that you
Yeah.
don't have to be a broke artist, you don't have to be a struggling artist. There are many ways that you can create a life for yourself where art has a role, and it can be a central role. It can be the role that puts food in your mouth and a roof over your head. It can be a supporting role, and you have other things that supplement that, but that it can have a meaningful daily place in what you do. If you want that to be monetized, that is possible. But if you
Hmm.
don't, that's also okay and that's fine. And I think I had such a focus growing up on like go to school, get good grades, get into college, get a practical career, get a practical degree, like whatever, check these boxes. And in some ways I've done that, but in a lot of ways what I've figured out is you have to make space for these other things that are important and it's
Hmm.
possible to do that in a balanced way. And I think that art and art teachers are in a really wonderful position to be able to show students what is possible and that another life is possible and feasible and attainable and it can be what you make of it if you combine it with the right things. So I think instilling that into students and letting them know like you don't have to a 9 to 5 is great if that's what you want, but it does not have to be the only thing. And art can play
Yes.
a meaningful role in creating a life that you are proud of and that you're happy with and that is fulfilling to you.
Yeah. I mean, you've said it perfectly. I think that's so important for our students to hear because I think there sometimes is an assumption that to be an artist you have to be a full-time artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
But instilling the love of creating in our students is the hope that hopefully Camille you had an creative experience as a younger student enough that made you want to continue creating art and do that for the love of art making in yourself. And that's what hopefully art teachers are doing is trying to just give our students the ability to tap into that creative outlet whenever they need it or want it. And I'm so happy to be able to see your work doing that same thing. So thank you again for sharing that with us and for meeting with us today, Camille.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll do our last quick trivia question, and then as we are waiting for friends to answer, if you want to just tell us where they can follow along to follow you, Camille, and then I will also be sharing, like I said, a few more things in the Art of Ed story so that you can follow Camille. She also was on some really awesome podcasts recently. There was a couple cool articles about her work, so I will of course be sharing those as well. So here's your question, my friends. Those of you that are in the chat right now, the first person to answer this question, I will message you and then you can get your hands on this super cool holographic sticker. So the question is, what storefront was Camille's work recently featured in? This is always the most exciting part. What storefront was Camille's work recently featured in? And still technically, well, I don't know if the storefront has it, but it's online.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Yay! Sarah Vaith. You are our winner, Sarah dot V-A-E. Oh, we got a lot of people answering that. Thank you all for your responses. Sarah's my winner, but y'all thank you for your quick typing skills. All right, and then where can they follow you, Camille, so that they can be on your ceramic adventure with you?
I am Camille at the Wheel. That's my Instagram handle. My website is camilleatthewheel.com. And the best way to keep updated on my progress, on my shop updates, on where to find me is by joining my mailing list. And you can find that on my website. And also there's a link in my Instagram with all of the spots that you can find me. So Camille at the Wheel is where you can follow.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will be sharing even more about about you and your work, Camille. So have an excellent night. Thank you again, and we'll see you later.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks everybody for joining.
Bye.
Bye.